My name's Bruce Plested, and I'm much pleasure in opening this 19th annual meeting of Mainfreight Limited. Before commencing the business of the meeting, I'd like to introduce your directors to you. On my far left, Carl Howard Smith and Don Braid. On my far right, Simon Cotter, Richard Preble, and Brian Mogridge. Before moving the adoption of the accounts and reports, I'd like to give my impressions of the past year and of current and future activities. I'll then ask our Group Managing Director, Don Braid, to address the meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, your company has performed satisfactorily over the past year. Our net profit before abnormals increased by 14%. With the inclusion of abnormals, the tax paid increase is 36%. We continue to emphasise the need for our company in New Zealand and Australia to be the strong foundations that enable us to develop as a global business. Looking back 10 years to 2004, Mainfreight Australia made no contribution whatever to our profits. In the current year, 2014, New Zealand and Australia together made some 82% of our global profits, with Australia earning 31% of the total. This was a pre-tax profit of $35 million for Australia. We haven't been standing around over the past decade. Last month we held our 100th board meeting since listing on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. The first leg of the meeting was held in Los Angeles on a Friday. Your chairman had already visited 10 separate operations in Chicago, Dallas and Houston earlier in the week. The day commenced at 6 a.m. with a walk for the walkers and a jog for the joggers. The board was picked up at 6 a.m. and visited a separate operation in Los Angeles before commencing our meeting at 9 a.m. at our main Los Angeles operation. At 1 o'clock, we went to the team cafeteria, spread ourselves amongst the people, and Don Braid gave out long service awards to 3 people. The meeting reconvened, and presentations and discussions were held with the global CEO of Caratrans, the CEO of China, then the CEO of the USA. Then from 3 p.m. on, with 5 managers from the American Domestic Transport, Air and Ocean, National Sales and Logistics divisions. The meeting closed at 5:30 p.m. and we returned to our hotel where 2 or 3 board members went to the gym. The next day we flew to Amsterdam, arriving there Sunday morning. Spent the afternoon with the usual walking, jogging or gymming and bike riding around Amsterdam. Monday 7:30 a.m. depart for our European headquarters in Sierenburg. Walk around warehousing operation where they have 25 acres under one roof. See our John Deere tractor assembly business with 18 mechanics putting together John Deere tractors, and shook a lot of hands. The meeting commenced at 9:30 with presentations and discussions from the CEO of Europe, Mark Newman, who's a Kiwi, our European Forwarding and Transport Manager, European Sales Manager, Netherlands Forwarding Manager, European Logistics Manager, and John Gundy, another Kiwi, our European Air and Ocean Manager. Lunch met as many people as we could in the company cafeteria. At the meeting conclusion, 4:45, we met for drinks and snacks with the Sierenburg team, and then returned to Amsterdam. Tuesday morning, 6 a.m., jogging, walking, gymming. 9 a.m., meeting in the hotel for the Managing Director's review and open discussion. That meeting finished at 2 o'clock, and the chairman went to the airport for a flight to Shanghai for a branch visit there. This is a typical Mainfreight board meeting, 2 or 3 day meetings in different locations, cities or countries. In addition to operating in 20 different countries with 233 branches, and attempting to hold board meetings, at least in those places of significant size, profit, loss or complexity, it's important to realise how many quite distinct businesses we operate in. Some of these are domestic LCL freight by sea, rail, air and road, domestic in New Zealand, dangerous goods, and Australia, dangerous goods, wharf cartage, around town cartage, international air freight, perishable air freight, international ocean freight, wholesale international sea freight, full truckload, Mainfreight to home, warehousing, domestic forwarding. You might wonder why I'm going through all this. The reason for all this information is to help you realise the special knowledge that directors require to be able to operate in such a diverse business as Mainfreight. It takes many years for a new director to adequately understand the business. I'm grateful that we have such a highly skilled, knowledgeable and hard-working board of directors. Don Braid will now break with tradition and give an unscripted presentation to help give all those present a greater understanding of our business and finances. Before passing to Don, I would like to make the following comments. There remains considerable economic weakness in most of the world. Few would deny that we're experiencing some climate change, evident so far in more extremes of weather in very recent years. Our political leaders are struggling to deal with these very big problems. This may be a time when we as individuals have to play an important role, a role of maturity, tolerance and understanding toward our political leaders and the people and nations less well off. Anger, war, violence, insularity cause only anger, war, violence, insularity and retaliation. As individuals and collectively, we have important roles to play in dealing with these very challenging times. As for Mainfreight, we've built a strong platform over our first 36 years. In the 5 years since the global recession took hold, our 2014 profit has increased by a remarkable 81%, or some $49 million. Profits in every country and overall in Europe have improved on the previous year, and those improvements are continuing into the current year. We see great opportunities for this current year. Fellow shareholders, I would now like to ask the Group Managing Director, Don Braid, to give his presentation. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Bruce. As the shareholders can see, the walking, gymming, jogging helps for some directors, but not them all. Anyway, I thought that it might be better that we break from tradition, standing up here behind the podium reading some scripted address, so that we can ad-lib a bit more and for you to ask some more questions about our business. But hopefully for you to go away from this presentation, this shareholders meeting, knowing a bit more about Mainfreight, more about what we do, more about where we're going, more about what we're doing with our people around the world, and that you actually want to go away and buy a whole lot more shares and are cursing yourself for not buying a whole lot of shares earlier in the years. We'll cover the financials a little bit by country, some of our technology innovation, more about our people and our culture so that you understand us a little better, and then for those analysts that are in the room, perhaps a little more detail about how we're going to date, because I know that's why Marcus Curley's only turned up for the next 3 months result. Anyway, let's look at last year. We didn't quite make $2 billion. We had hoped to be there, just short of it. The currency exchange hurt us a little bit. Revenue up 2.1%. We take away that currency exchange effect, it was nearly 5%. EBITDA of 149, cursing ourselves we didn't get across the magic figure of 150, and a net profit of 89.6 million after our lawyer man here, Carl Howard Smith, managed to extract 12 million euro from our friends in Europe. Just looking at that analysis by revenue by country, as you can see, we got quite good revenue increases across everywhere other than the USA. And the USA disappointed us a little bit. Sea freight rates out of Caratrans and our domestic business didn't quite behave as well as we thought they would, and our sales were not quite where they should be. But, you know, growth everywhere, 4.8% excluding FX. At the EBITDA line, a little better. So we achieved 11.7% excluding FX, 8.5% if we included FX. But as you can see, in every country other than Europe, we achieved quite good EBITDA increases. Now, the real problem for us was Europe overall at a negative of 5.6%. But the thing to remember is in the last 6 months, our EBITDA improved 18%. And for the analysts in the room, if there's more than one, for the analysts, that improvement has continued into this new financial year for all the businesses, but more so for Europe. So those of you that have had some concerns about what we're doing in Europe, I think you'll start to see some improved results. For the accountants in the room, a quick look at the balance sheet. Total assets of 975 million. Shareholders' equity has improved a little bit to 442. Property, plant and equipment, 403 million, but more interestingly, property is 352 million. A lot of property, and we own a lot of property across New Zealand, Australia and Europe. Not so much so in China and not so much so yet in the USA. Net debt of 208 million, which we were able to reduce from 237, so a nice gearing ratio of 32%, which I understand the banks are happy with. And because of that increased profit, we were able to increase your dividend from 27 cents for the year prior up to 32 cents. If anybody has any questions or are trying to get a word in, please put your hand up and I'm happy to answer as we move through this. A little bit about our capital management as we work through, because CapEx for this coming year, about 103 million, and mostly spent around property. A lot here in New Zealand, Christchurch, Auckland, Hamilton, Dunedin, and we're disposing of a couple of properties in Hamilton and Palmerston North. I'll talk about those properties and show you some pictures in a minute. And in Australia, the completion of our Brisbane site and some land that we bought in Melbourne and looking to buy a second parcel of land in Melbourne to help our expansion there. So 103 in total, of that 25 million will be plant and equipment. In terms of our funding, we took the opportunity to review our banking arrangements sort of 4 months ago. And that debt restructure was very interesting. We were previously with 2 banks, CBA and Westpac, and we went to the market, went to about 6 or 7 banks around the world after considering what sort of capital arrangements we could put together. Out of that, we looked at other ways of raising capital, and of course the boys in suits from Shortland Street wanted us to do all sorts of capital raising. However, the answer for us, and I think the answer for you as our shareholders, is that we went to a 4-bank arrangement, 2 from Australia, CBA and Westpac, they hung in there, and then Hong Kong HSBC and the Bank of Tokyo. Very, very competitively priced. Our debt facilities went from 390 million to 450 with those 4 banks. If we'd taken everything that they threw at us, we could have debt facilities of 750. We went for a 5-year term, evergreen, and we have interest cover of 17 times. It was probably the best debt negotiation we've ever engaged in, and we're told that the margins that have been applied to that debt are some of the best in the marketplace that both companies have seen in New Zealand and Australia. So let's talk about each of the countries, just have a quick flick through. New Zealand increased their revenue and increased their EBITDA. Another great performance from our team from New Zealand. Our domestic transport volumes were up. Yes, we had some problems with rail and the ferries. Nevertheless, our team, so experienced with such a great network, they continued to deliver on our customers' expectations. A lot of that freight was FMCG, hardware and building related. In the logistics division, we've got new warehouses in Auckland and Christchurch to help our growth. And I'll talk a little bit more later on, but we've also moved into the ambient and chilled sector for the food market. And our air and ocean business performed extremely well, increasing their market share, particularly out of Asia, imports to New Zealand. Just having a look at some of our building projects. This is the rebuild of our Christchurch facility. So we've nearly doubled the size of our warehousing, nearly doubled the size of our freight facility there. And we expect to be on the freight facility in September, and we expect to be on site in total by May 2015. We chose to go early in Christchurch to lock in cheaper building costs. We've been at this project now for about 18 months. If we'd gone to the building process later in the piece, I think it would have cost us a lot more money, and perhaps we might not have got the job done as quickly as we have. This is the Wesley Road site, which is not far away from here, and the area under construction, as you can see in the photo, is the new area that we're bringing a food customer into, plus taking racking out of the old site and filling it with chillers. So we're moving into ambient and chilled food distribution and warehousing that we've never been in before. And it's an opportunity for us. The supermarkets and some customers here in New Zealand have pushed us to this level and have pushed us for a long time. We see the opportunity to be in this market. We took it, and we're improving those facilities to be able to do it. The benefits of having land banking has enabled us to do that on our site in our time when we were ready. Had we not bought the extra land with that site, we wouldn't have been able to do that. Hamilton ran out of room, only 7 years old. We've got grown the business dramatically there, so we bought some land. We couldn't do a deal with rail, so we bought some land adjacent to the main trunk line, convinced rail to run a shunt into us, and that's the state of that building currently, and we hope to have that completed by May 2015. The outlook for New Zealand, expect that business to continue to improve. Entry into the chilled ambient food business. Logistics will face some increased costs with those new buildings, but it gives us a new capability that we've never had before. And in our air and ocean business, continue to expect to see that growth out of Asia. In Australia, good growth, reasonable performance across all the divisions. The one area that bothered us was the domestic transport business, where we got ourselves involved in parcel freight. And about this time last year, we exited $12 million worth of freight by going to see the customers, telling them that we didn't want the parcels, did it as best as we could, exited that, and we saw the inefficiencies that the parcel freight was bringing to the business. Between July and the end of the financial year, we saw margins improve, costs decrease, which proved to us that we did the right thing by exiting parcels. We're not in parcels, we're in freight. Chem Couriers, which we run here in New Zealand, we've got up and running in Australia, and we expect to see that being a key differentiator for the Australian market. Our logistics division continues to go from strength to strength in the Australian market, and our air and ocean business has been strengthened by also getting themselves involved in the perishable freight business, which we have a very dominant role here in New Zealand in. Some of the building projects in Australia, this is the Preston Sydney site. I've seen a few building sites in my time around the world. I'd have to say this is world class. It's a mixture of freight, cross-docking and warehousing, and it's one of our better sites. Very big one. We've still got the ability to fill the warehouse another 5,000 or 6,000 pallets, but gives us great room for growth. That's the inside of the building, high class, high quality warehousing. This is the Larapinta site in Brisbane, just completed. Probably one of our most expensive building projects that we've completed, but again, giving us the ability to grow both warehousing and transport together, and the opportunity to actually be a real force to be reckoned with in that Australian transport market. This is a look inside the transport facility, inside the warehousing facility. Great racking, lovely colour, and of course gives us the opportunity to have more warehousing than we've ever had in that market. In Melbourne, we have a facility currently at Clayton. We've bought some land at Epping, which enables us to build probably one of our biggest ever freight and logistics facilities, and the planning and tendering of that is underway right now. We think in those bigger cities, Melbourne and Sydney particularly, that we'll have to have a second site, and we're busy looking for land out in Dandenong, which is south of our old site. So we'll be able to cover the city with 2 sites. Our larger competitors do exactly the same, and we've reached a stage where we need to do exactly that by having 2 facilities for these large cities. The Australian outlook: increased sales activity. Building costs will impact that first half of the result, but we're still ahead of last year for the 3 months. Stronger emphasis on quality throughout the business. It's not quite as good as the New Zealand business. If we can get it up to there, we'll beat the competition with service, beat the competition with high quality freight services. Our air and ocean growth we expect to continue to grow, particularly in perishable. And I think long term you should see very good growth coming out of Australia, and likely to beat the profits and revenues that we draw out of this country in New Zealand. But together, combined, having the strength of New Zealand and Australia, it allows us to continue to grow our business around the world. Some of the shareholders that have been with us for some time will remember it was the profits of New Zealand that got us started in Aussie. Well, today we've got that right, and some of those shareholders wanted us to come home from Aussie in the early days. But we got it right. And it's the combined profits we've got there now which will help us expand offshore. In the Americas, yes, we improved the revenue, but only by a couple of percent. EBITDA improved a couple of million. I guess our sales revenues, as I've already said, the increase disappointed us. In a big market like that, we expect to see 15 to 20% growth, and we didn't get it. As I said, ocean freight rate fluctuations and domestic sales were poor. In the Caratrans business, so 2 businesses in America, one's Caratrans, which is a wholesale sea freight operator, and the other one is Mainfreight, which is what you know Mainfreight here in New Zealand as. In Caratrans, we improved our margins through better operational efficiency, improved our line haul negotiation, and are growing our imports so that we can control our freight from around the world. And we improved some services, more services into China, Korea and France, and initiated services back into the Caribbean. For Caratrans, they must grow into Europe. They use agents in Europe now, and that's a problem for us. The agents are controlling our growth, in fact, inhibiting our growth, and we need to see that we get far greater growth, and we think if we have more control, then we'll have that growth. So we're attempting to be able to find something for Caratrans to be able to grow themselves in Europe. The domestic performance in the year was less than satisfactory. However, in that last quarter, we found some momentum. Again, for the analysts in the room, we've continued that momentum into this first quarter, and hopefully for the rest of the year. We've got more LTL freight, the sort of freight that we've got in New Zealand and Australia, and we've committed ourselves to more road line haul. Our 3PL warehousing business, and I'll show you some photos as to why. We'll go to separate facilities in America, which we haven't got right now, like we've got in New Zealand and Australia. And that will change the game again for us in America. There is no capital expenditure really for America. We don't own anything, we lease it. And the theory is that when we know how big we could be there, then we'll know whether we have to buy 100 acres or 1,000 acres. But we still sort of don't understand the size of the facilities that we'll need for that market. We run about 20 trucks off the wharf in LA, similar to what we do here in Auckland and Christchurch. One lone Canadian geese in our Chicago facilities. Similar operation. Looks the same sort of people, same disciplines, same culture. This is the reason why we need non-shed facilities. This is a transport facility in LA, probably one of our biggest, and we've got warehousing, car consolidation, and freight consolidation for domestic freight on the one site. If that was New Zealand or Australia, we have separate sites for warehousing, separate sites for transport, and that's where we're heading for that American business. For the outlook for the Americas, Mainfreight USA sales continue to grow, particularly in air and ocean and in domestic. The entry to 3PL warehousing will bolster that supply chain activity. Expect our air and ocean business to grow substantially, not to New Zealand and Australia, but to Asia and to Europe. That's where the growth is for us. Caratrans expect a similar performance to what we had last year, and as I've talked about, their Western Europe development and their import growth being a key strategic initiative. In Europe, our full year sales were up 2.5%, but our EBITDA disappointed. Not forgetting what that second 6 months did, and that trend we got in the second 6 months has continued into this new financial year. Domestic forwarding was inhibited by our Belgian performance, and we've made some changes there. We've closed a branch in Antwerp, and we expect to get some performance out of that. We've gained a very large account out of the UK, which is flowing into the Belgian business. We've had it for about 3 weeks. Done a pretty good job so far, but we expect to see the profits improve in Belgium because of it. Our logistics and air and ocean business are both improving, and we're starting to see some growth pan-European, so across the European area. Lots more customer gains, particularly in the food sector, and we're getting to last round status in a lot of tenders. And the last people, there's the DHLs and the Kuehne Nagels and so forth that are there, but lo and behold, here's Mainfreight number 1 or number 2 in those tenders. So we're beginning to compete with the bigger guys, and we were never doing that in the last couple of years. So we've found a niche which we think is exciting for us in Europe. Just to give you a feel for some of the facilities, we own about 51.8 million euro of property in Europe. These are a couple of facilities. This is a hazardous warehouse on the top left-hand side, and that's the cross-dock operation in Serenburg. That just happens to be the 25 acres of warehousing that Bruce walked around or jogged around in the first day that we were there. And you see all the John Deere tractors lined up there. That's the amount of work we do. All the Western European distribution for John Deere, putting together the tractors with the 18 mechanics that Bruce was talking about. So it's almost a replica of the factory line that John Deere has in America. We're performing in that facility. A very good facility, and we're learning a lot of lessons from the people that run that facility. In fact, one of the reasons why we think we're doing so well in Australia in logistics is because one of the guys that came out of that facility has come to Australia and done a good job for us. Specialised bikes, parts, put in new racking and picking facilities at a cost of just under $1 million, but has improved the efficiency of the warehouse. Weiersdorf, which is a large FMCG customer based out of Germany that we've renewed the contract with and doing a very good job for. The Asian business, still small, but just to explain those revenues, if any freight coming out of Asia is paid in America, New Zealand or Australia or Europe for that matter in our business, we don't double count it. The real revenues out of Asia are about 100 million. So it's quite a large business, 230, 240 odd people. Network expansion up there for us into Thailand and into Taiwan. We're trying to grow into the US and now into Europe. It's primarily air and ocean focused. We don't want to own warehouses there just yet, and we sure as hell don't want to be running freight around in trucks inside China. Not just yet. We're not ready for that. The focus is to grow that air and ocean capability, grow the profits into something really substantial that allows us to actually go and do those things once we've got some size. Expect that strong growth to continue. It has continued in these first 3 months. The Asia-Europe trade lane is the real focus. Southeast Asia development will come. We've got ourselves into Singapore, into Thailand, looking for a second operation in Thailand, and Vietnam. We hope before the end of this financial year, Malaysia and the Philippines are under consideration. So we see the ASEAN region as separate from China. It has real potential. It's 12 different countries making 12 different decisions rather than China making one decision. If they choose not to run with a New Zealand product, then, it shuts down the New Zealand development, whereas the 12 ASEAN regions, 12 different decisions, opportunity for us to do more business. Just to give you a feel, we are a global business. We are beginning to trade all around the world. This isn't just a New Zealand domestic business playing offshore. We have got our presence all around the world. These are the trade lanes that we're moving freight both by air and by sea every single day. Now, we're not as big as the big guys, but we're catching them up. And I think the other thing to realise, and particularly the analyst community, if some of them are here, is that they've got to stop just thinking about Europe or stop thinking about America, but think about what the network produces for us. Think about the customers we've gained in Europe and what they're doing for us now in Australia and New Zealand and in America. Because that's what's happened. We've turned into being a global business with opportunities all around the world. That network is what we're about. That's where the development will come from. Air and ocean growth will be our greatest area of potential. Now, once we've got the air and ocean business, we can push the domestic freight and the warehousing into those customers and look to service their capabilities. It's exciting. It's something we haven't had the opportunity to do on a global page ever before. The preference in that network is to, rather than work with agents, is to own it ourselves. When you work with an air and ocean agent, you share the profit 50%. So if we share the profit with ourselves, it's all in the pot. Whereas if we share it with someone else, runs a small little business in Germany or Malaysia or Singapore, that's 50% of the profit we've lost. There's a risk with it, but with that risk comes great opportunity and great profitability for us as a business. It improves our ability to negotiate with the lines. For the first time, we got to see Maersk's headquarters in Copenhagen. They were happy to come and speak to us, or allow us to come and speak to them. And a bit of Mainfreight luck, we got into their private conference area where they had all their CEOs from around the world. We got to speak at the highest possible level. We're trying to do that with the other airlines and the other shipping lines. They see us as an emerging player as against the bigger guys. And of course, that perishable business we expect to grow, done so well here in New Zealand, we started it in Australia, and we expect to do the same in the United States and in Europe. We invest quite a lot of money in technology in this business, sort of 11.5 million this year, but it continues to give us efficiency and productivity gains, provides our customers with great information. We've now got we're very close to getting a smart app that will run on mobile phones, similar to the Air New Zealand app that some of you people might use. And it gives us some competitive advantage. In the early days, it gave us a lot of competitive advantage. Today, not quite, but it gives us that leverage to compete with those bigger guys. And we're a bit more flexible. Over the year, we spent money getting all our air and ocean divisions on the same database. We've got Mainfreight USA into our own software, and we've looking to upgrade our customer portal, and we're looking to improve our domestic technology in New Zealand and Australia in this coming year, and a transport management system for Europe. Just a little bit about our culture. Our people are our greatest asset, and they are our leaders for the future. You know, we really work hard to recruit the right sort of people. We spend a lot of money and a lot of time training. We've just had 20 emerging branch managers from all around the world here for the last week, learning how to be a Mainfreight branch manager. Our people, key people in the business that do such a good job for us here in New Zealand, took time out of their busy days to actually help these people become better leaders. We're doing that all the time. We want to promote from within. We're not looking for branch managers, salespeople, operations people from outside of the business, hopefully not managing directors. But we're trying to grow our own. It's our culture. We're proud of it, and it means a lot to us. We haven't got widgets and gadgets to sell. We've only got the ability of our people. And if we've got great people giving great service, we've got an advantage over the others. And of the 5,771 and 233 branches around the world, we expect each and every one of them to take the responsibility to look after the customer. If we can get them making decisions, it's a lot easier for us to get on and grow this business. Just as an example, this came across our desk just the other day. We get an update of those who are having years of service coming up in each of the months over the upcoming months. And just to show you, as a quick look, the number of people that have been with us for an awful long time. Now that's just in New Zealand. The same is for Australia, the same for America, the same for Europe, the same for Asia. These are experienced people giving us an advantage. Give you a look at our leadership team. In the room, I think we've got Craig Evans and Carl George. These guys are the powerhouse of the New Zealand business. 1,800 odd people in their team. Rod Morgan running Australia. Mark Newman taking on everyone in Europe with his pose there. 1,800 odd people in Europe. Michael O'Farrow in Asia, 242 people there. Greg Howard and John Hepworth in the United States. Kevin Drinkwater, our Director of IT, who I think might be in the room. He is 74. I think it's bigger than IBM, but they spend about as much money. But we couldn't do without them. Martin Devereaux, who heads up our training and HR team, 33 of those. We spend a lot of money around the world making sure we recruit properly and train properly. And the smallest accounting team in the world, Tim Williams and his one other employee. Seriously, it's not like that at all, but it's decentralised. And we push that accounting out to where the customers are and where the business is. A little bit about who we are and how we are. We aspire to be a 100-year company. That's why Bruce talks about directors that are with us for a long time. That's why we talk about our people being with us for a long time. We seek to delight our customers. We under-promise and over-deliver, and we probably take that attitude with the analysts and the analyst community here as well. Quality, focus and measurement. We're always setting high standards and we're trying to beat them. And we want to be easy to do business with. We want to be the one thing the customer wants to call. They're happy to call us, not the other guy. We're easy to pick up the phone and talk to. Training and development, promotion from within, profit sharing. Bruce and I have just personally signed 2,271 cheques, which is the bonus cheques, which total $15 million for people across the world. And that's out of 75% out of those that were eligible for the bonus get that cheque within the next 3 weeks from last year's profit. Now, anyone that begrudges us to paying that bonus would see that EBITDA slide away. That helps us be a better performer. We share those profits with the people that make the money. There is no bureaucracy, hierarchy, or superiority in the business, and morale is so key and the catalyst for our culture. For those of you that don't know, every Monday night, Tuesday morning, we know what the profit is in our businesses in those 231 branches for the week prior. We don't budget, and all we do is compare that profit from last week to the same week last year. It gives us an edge. More importantly, rather than Bruce and I skiting about how good the profit is, it's about the branch manager understanding the decisions they made and what they did last week to make that profit. We get that touch as close to the customer as possible. They understand their margins, understand their costs, understand their revenues. Some get it right, some don't. But it's so key and so much part of our culture, this weekly P&L reporting. There is no cross-subsidisation between any of the business. Everybody pays their own way. There's a long-term profit rather than a short-term profit. That's the picture that we're looking for. We're a different business than we were 5 years ago. We're a different business than we were 15 years ago, and we've got to keep reinventing ourselves to keep up with the market and to make sure our customers get the services that they're looking for. We've created some pretty strong cultures. We learnt very early on that we couldn't take the Mainfreight New Zealand culture to Australia because they just gave us the one-finger salute. So we created a Mainfreight Aussie culture, created a Mainfreight Asian culture, same in the USA, and the same in Europe. Just little things are different. The disciplines don't change. Just to have a look at the group outlook, expect all our regions to outperform last year. Trading in the first month, it's a good improvement on what was a really low base last year. So the improvement we've got, which is good. So all regions, the EBITDA is up on the prior year, 10+%. We've got a tough year still in front of us, and our challenge is to carry that improvement on. And we expect to spend about 100 million of capex in this current year. Medium to long term, you've got to expect you have invested in a global business. We're exposed to Asia, USA and Europe, and that's where our growth is going to come from. Our air and ocean business will have a far bigger role to play, and do expect Australia to exceed New Zealand earnings in the medium to long term. To close, we've got ambitions to be in every major trading nation of the world. New Zealand and now Australia, their profit capability is enabling us to get around to do that. We've got high quality freight services delivered by a bunch of passionate, energetic people who forge long-term careers for us. Acquisitions will help our growth. However, they've got to fit our jigsaw. We've given a list to the board this morning of the acquisitions that are in front of us if we were interested. To be fair, not many of them fit our jigsaw. There's plenty for sale, but they're not necessarily the right things for us. Organic growth is preferred. Asia, USA and Europe, we have very, very high expectations of all three, and our air and ocean growth will be important to our aspirations. Just to close with the words of our chairman, we will continue to seek growth and excellence, and profit will come. Thank you.
I was hoping to read a comment from Warren Buffett, a comment that he had on directors. He said, this is what Warren Buffett said in 2007. The heading is How Not to Choose Directors. Consultants and CEOs seeking board candidates will often say, we're looking for a woman or a Hispanic or someone from abroad or what have you. It sometimes sounds as if the mission is to stock Noah's Ark. Over the years, I've been queried many times about potential directors and have yet to hear anyone ask, does he think like an intelligent owner? That's Warren Buffett. He's done all right. I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.